Kane, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of DRS with Ash. I'm sure being the captain of the New Zealand team and captain of SRH, you know a thing or two about DRS. What's the first thing that goes into your head when I say DRS? One thing is India never took DRS for a long time. Is there any other memory?
DRS, man. It's a tough one. Often a view I have is you can't take them home with you, so you might as well use them. But that often leads you down the track of getting quite a few wrong, and I certainly don't have a very good record of getting them right. But I mean, look, it's been an interesting thing seeing the DRS itself evolve. Obviously, that's slightly metaphorical for what it is that you're doing, but the topic DRS is always an interesting one to debate.
Right. Kane, I'll just dive into the first question that I had. You're one of 5 siblings in your family. You've got a twin brother, if I'm not wrong, and everybody plays sport. And you could have just about been into any sport, right? Been into basketball, been into rugby, which is the biggest sport in New Zealand, and then you chose cricket. How lucky is cricket to have you on board?
I don't know. I mean, I feel fortunate to play cricket. Always have loved cricket, but growing up, like you mentioned, I enjoyed playing a number of sports and really enjoyed looking back the balance that provided, whether it was other sports or schoolwork or other interests basically. And I think as you get a little bit older, you start perhaps channeling your interests to the things that might suit you a little bit more, whether that's mentally, physically, whatever that is. And, rugby, I'm probably not the body shape to be successful at that. Looking at some of the rugby players these days are big, strong people. And basketball, I mean, as we know, perhaps not quite tall enough, but had a real passion for those sports. But ultimately, I've always loved cricket, and still very much enjoying the journey.
Right. It's funny that one of your childhood coaches actually went on to say you break things into nuts and bolts, and that you could just be good in anything you wanted to be. You could be excellent at whatever you put your mind to. Right. A lot of people in this part of the world know Kane as one of those nice guys who plays the game, who came second best in the 2019 World Cup, which was not entirely your fault. But almost you're someone who's chased excellence like anything right from your childhood. What does the word excellence signify to you?
Yeah, look, I mean, for me growing up, I do remember a lot of teachers saying I was inquisitive, and I suppose that connects with sport or perhaps anything else you might do, where there's always been a real interest to improve and grow. And the word excellence, that's kind of hard to define, and especially in our sport where there's so many variables, and one day you could feel amazing and not get runs and not get wickets, and another day you don't feel as good. And I think I'm sure you're going to start talking a little bit more about this, but perhaps decision making is actually one of the biggest parts to what people might describe as excellence, because one of the beauties in cricket and probably most sports is there's a lot of different shapes and sizes, and natural ability is probably there in most people, but at all different levels. However, if you're able to make better decisions than not, then I do think it gives you a pretty good opportunity. But it's funny because you don't tend to think about excellence. You just think, I believe anyway, about improvement. That's, I think about trying to improve all the time and hope that you can, we're fortunate to play in teams and a number of different ones, and all you want to do is help that team as much as you can, I reckon.
Because you said you're part of the team, and even if you're the leader, you still need to be one amongst the others. How difficult or how easy is it to mix along? Because when you take Australia, it's all riding around Stephen Smith, to an extent David Warner. When you take England, it does come around the leader, which is Joe Root. You like it or not, when you say New Zealand, it's very, very cognizant with Kane Williamson, and then so on with Virat and Babar Azam for Pakistan. There are so many such synonymous names that I can write about. But what really sticks out when it comes to the Kiwis is the fact that it's all top down, right? There is so much planning, there is so much decision making in terms of driving the team together. Like for example, I think I was talking to Tim Southey, and he said, we plan well in advance and stick to the plan, come what may, even if it's 12, 18 months down the line. Is there anything different that you guys do on those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I think when Tim perhaps was talking about planning, it was probably more a commitment to the style that best suits us, because often the plans within the game, I mean, I don't think I've ever planned for a game and it's always gone perfectly. There's often things that you set out to do, but as you know, and everybody else that's played the game, it's very rarely perfect. So a lot of the time it's adapting and looking to adjust in the moment and be flexible enough to do that. So I suppose within the planning, it's not a rigid system. It's it's being flexible enough to commit to the style of play that you want to be playing day in, day out, but trying to be smart as well. And I think you mentioned our playing numbers, and we're a small country, and so often trying to do that to the best of our ability gives us the opportunity to perhaps challenge the big boys like yourself, which we always have the pleasure of doing, and a number of other countries that it's always a great opportunity to play again.
Initially, when we started, I asked you about how your childhood times coach said that you break things down into nuts and bolts. I'm not sure. The name doesn't ring a bell. But then you do play on the park where you bat, and then where you lead the side, you decide which bowler to bring on, which field positions to change in limited overs format of the game. Now here, how much of decision making is intuitive? How much of decision making is planned? And how much of decision making happens because you've done something and reviewed it from the past?
I think as time goes on, often that review process is important. Not always a structured review, but perhaps an awareness of what's happened in the past. But I think the planning is important. It kind of gives you a reference. So I always think the clarity of the plan is really important if things aren't perhaps going that well, and when things aren't going as well, sometimes the clarity and thinking isn't as good as it should be. So that's where you can perhaps refer to that plan, and it might help regain that direction. And then but I do think it's very important that when you're on the field that you're able to perhaps move and adjust to the rhythm of the game, and try and get an understanding of that, and know when to push and perhaps when not to, or when to what it is you're basically trying to execute, even if in that moment it doesn't look all that pretty for your side, but there are still, I guess, opportunities that you can take. And I do think the planning is important for a reference, but when you're on the park, as I mentioned earlier, planning is never perfect, never always follows the right line, and so it is important that you adjust with it.
Right. Now, just to get into a more concrete example of what it's done, like if a player goes out to, let me just take an example of myself. When I go out there to play, I decide what my plans are, where I should be bowling, what sort of fields I have to keep, and I don't have to necessarily plan or decide on anything else. But a leader, especially of someone like your stature, when you played the final against England and you sent out Martin Guptill and Jimmy Neesham out there to bat in the super over. Now, how does that decision making happen? Is it instinctive? Then finally, a leader is responsible for what he has to say. He needs to decide what he needs to say. Once the final was over, what did you say to Jimmy Neesham and Martin Guptill?
I had a very quick, brief discussion with the coach, Gary, and we obviously had a few guys in mind, and because we were going to be batting second in the super over, it was going to be dependent on the total that we needed to chase and who the most likely bowler is that they're going to use. And then you're basically trying to give yourself the best opportunity, and someone like Neesham throughout the whole competition had hit the ball really nicely, and Martin didn't spend as much time in the middle, but we all know how capable he is of hitting the ball out of the park, and the left-hander part was really important because there was a short boundary on one side, and so as we saw that proved to be effective, and then at very worst, they're both quick between the wickets, so we knew we needed one, maybe two boundaries to chase down what was it, 14 or 15, or and then in amongst that, it was about being busy. So so I was padded up to come in at 3, but it was a really interesting experience to be a part of, and I mean, afterwards, look, they did a superb job. I mean, to effectively chase it down or get the same score, as we know that's not always easy to do in one over, and Jofra is a world-class bowler, and then other things unfolded and decided our fate. But there were a lot of good parts of that tournament that we enjoyed being involved in. Emotions were so high that anything that was spoken wouldn't have been heard anyway. So it was, I think, a matter of trying to decompress over a period of time, not just that moment, but perhaps days afterwards. It's a long tournament, sort of 6 weeks or so of looking to make those small steps forward to ultimately give yourself the opportunity, and I guess when that time comes and it finishes, whether it's the final or semi-final, then it's sort of it's like a real kind of draining feeling where you all of a sudden become tired. It's the intensity's taken away, and the carrot of the next opportunity is gone, and so you sort of deflate. And I think that's where the guys were, combined with the emotion of what obviously unfolded. So it was, I think, letting it be and let guys sort of let their hair down and just sort of kind of get away from it for a bit was really important.
Right. I speak to a lot of guys that are trying to dig their, whatever they know about Kane Williamson, the person. And the only thing I get in return is, once the game's over, you can find Kane by the swimming pool reading a book. Is it right? Or are they trying to make you look very serious than what you are?
No, I didn't spend much time by the pool. I'm not sure you're talking to. But the games tend to finish at about 2 a.m, so that wouldn't be a good look. No, I try and do a bit of reading, and often the routine you kind of sleep in to such a late time, and sort of get up, and you've only got a few hours, and naturally you have a few regular guys that you might spend a bit of time with, if it's outside of team time, and chew the fat, and a few activities and things, which is always good fun. But hopefully we can do that all again at some point in time.
Yeah, really look forward to it, because it's not looking like it's going to open right now. But putting things into perspective, Ken, you came and played the IPL, right? It was what was IPL like for you as a player? Was it something that you were looking forward to try and stake a claim as a T20 player? How hard? Because you always had this complete game of being able to adapt, like you mentioned earlier on in the chat. How big a tournament was the IPL to showcase, or even tell yourself or show yourself that this was very important? What does it mean to you?
I mean, the initial interest was obviously watching the IPL and seeing how big it was, and understanding that it was obviously the biggest domestic competition, and one of the biggest competitions, in cricket. So to try and have the opportunity to play in it, and still with T20 cricket, I guess, being relatively new, it was what I saw was a great opportunity to experience it and learn, and so certainly appreciated the opportunity to do that, and to have been there for a number of years now, and it's certainly an incredible spectacle to be a part of, and as you know, every day perhaps, but for us to see the passion for cricket in that country, in India, and to be involved in it is an amazing thing, and such a brilliant competition at such a high standard, And it's brought a really interesting dynamic to the sport, to the international sport, where obviously a lot of other countries have followed suit. So now so many other opportunities and different competitions to meet all different people. And here we are having a conversation over Zoom in 2 different countries, which is a great thing.
Just another dimension, right? You came in as a player. You did exceedingly well. In fact, you went on in 2016 to win the IPL. And from there on, you became the captain of SRH, right? And how is it to lead a side like SRH? Let's forget about how it came upon you. We met the year before, and how different is it generally from leading a New Zealand team to leading a team like SRH?
I mean, it's quite different, really. I didn't know what to expect, but took a very similar attitude, and that you'll learn a lot. But like I mentioned, it is very much an Indian competition. So you're coming into quite a different culture that, not having lived in India, that you're completely familiar with. Although we get to taste it every now and again, which is great. So it was coming in to try and keep an open mind, as you know, and there's so much experience within each group at just trying to work with the players, and we had a great support staff to align with, who worked very hard in the background. And so often my job was very much on the field, but a fantastic bunch of players to work with, and it was a very enjoyable season.
Right. It's going to be very difficult for me to pull out any controversial statements out of you, but still I'm going to try. What is it like, a ticking difference between leading an Indian-based SRH side versus a homegrown New Zealand side? To even put more things into perspective, what is that one? You said your job is on the field. Is that exactly how you do it in NZ as well, or is it slightly different?
I mean, it's a little bit different. I obviously was coming in whilst Davey wasn't there for that season. So, and the support staff had been there for such a long period of time and had a lot of success. So it certainly wasn't coming in to change things. It was just trying to add where I could, but try and keep the team and maintain its position. And that was to, I guess, once again, maintain the style of cricket that we wanted to play, which was already there. And so it was a great opportunity to come in and be a part of that and work with guys from all different countries and obviously the local players that were there. And with New Zealand, a little bit different, where you've been in the environment for such a long period of time and perhaps more involved with some of the change and direction. And I suppose that's some of the differences with franchise-based sport and perhaps playing for your own board. So it's, I mean, there are a number of different parts, whether it's culturally or it's a systematical sort of difference in leadership and in terms of management and perhaps owners or boards, but both different but enjoyable to experience them.
I'm sure it was, because both are real good success stories, and you rightly hit the nail on the head. There is going to be difference in terms of the style of play and cultures. I think I should have framed the question a little better, more so to put it into action. There are a lot of leaders around, Kane, be it in the corporate sector, be it in whatever sector they are. Let's say a corporate in India and a corporate in New Zealand. For example, in India, if the results aren't happening, we tend to switch personnels, right? Let's say in a New Zealand cricket team, the option of switching personnels is not quite there. You'll have to invest on people. Does investing on people for a longer period of time create a more family sort of a feeling compared to switching over people for results? Is that anything that you can shed some light on?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is an important part of leadership, is making people feel valued and doing your best to do that. So often that perhaps might mean some investment, because things are fickle and experiences need to be learned, and often failure is a part of that. So, but I think it can depend on your measure as well. If every day is just defined by the win and the loss, then I think the reaction to that can be a little bit too fickle. So I suppose if you have a philosophy that you believe in, and there's a a large majority that also understand that and like to see the team head in that direction, then, you know, that perhaps understanding from other players is a bit clearer, and it's not, you know, ultimately you want to try and encourage that selfless behaviour. So, you know, whatever adds to encouraging that in another player, you know, whether that's, like you mentioned, sometimes that investment or maybe the words that you might use, I think is very valuable. So if you've got, you know, a bunch of people that are committed to something common, and seeing that move in a common trend, then, you know, you can do some pretty cool things, I reckon.
Right. We've spoken a lot about your planning, your decision making, instinctive, and all that sort of stuff. Can we just shed light before we close off on how your review system works? Supposing, say, you make some decisions, believing in the future, believing in the short-term plan, believing in the mid-term plan, or whatever it is. How do you review those decisions, or do you review it at all?
You know, I think there's a forever want to improve, and I think being flexible with that is really important, because it's ever changing. But, you know, at the same time, you know, you do want to, you know, part of that is learning from perhaps some past mistakes, but also what has worked as well, and what has been good to the environment improving. So, yeah, I do think there are elements of that, but I also think there are times where you can sit back and I suppose switch off and try and utilize that time to remain, I guess, fresh with some of your ideas. And you know, COVID's been a remarkable time in our history, really, and obviously everybody's having different, far different experiences to one another in different countries and all these sorts of things. But, you know, I guess for a cricketer, and for a New Zealand cricketer at the moment, with the end of our season, it has been one of those times to sit down and relax and try and, you know, perhaps take a wider view on things. But then I'm sure, much like yourself, look forward to the time where the team gets back together and starts preparing for for something more. And, you know, as we know, and our schedule that keeps coming sort of thicker and faster, there's always different pinnacle events and opportunities to see the team improve and grow. And I think that's where our focus is at.
Okay, finally, before I let you go, why is Kane Williamson social media redundant? Why can't anybody get anything off you?
No, mate. You obviously haven't followed me on Instagram.
I have.
Have you? Oh, well,
that's exactly why I say you're social media redundant.
So yeah. Look, I'm probably a bit slow on the social media, but obviously I'm on it now. Just on Instagram, you know, it's a bit of fun, which is cool and awesome to connect with some of all the people out there that are interested, which is very cool. But I'm learning from people like yourself who are far more successful in that department.
I'm not. I'm doing something to keep myself occupied.
Here we are. Yeah.
I've got an active mind. I need to keep myself occupied. Yeah, sure. But I mean, Kane, on a really lighter note, I was speaking to Sangakkara on Instagram the other day on live, and he said, you know what, I need help to latch on to you, go live, because I'm a dinosaur when it comes to social media.
Yeah. So, I had the same situation with Davey Warner. I was about half an hour late, and apparently at one stage I was live videoing my feet, complaining on how on earth do I do this. Yeah, it wasn't good, but and this time I've certainly improved a little bit. No complications here, eh?
Correct. One of the flip sides of COVID, right? You get a lot of time for yourself, and you need to explore new dimensions.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Kane. It was wonderful talking to you, and it was great to take these 30 minutes off you in your valuable time where you might have flipped through another book. So thank you for joining me on DRS with Ash. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot of insights from what you've said. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ash. Nice to see you, mate.
Cheers.